All right. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Welcome to House of Yuya After Show. We are your host, sisters from the House of Yuya. And of course, we are following our master, Chief Yuya, founder of Anu Life Global Ministries, his Sabbath message that he just delivered on the Anu Life Global Ministry YouTube channel. And he was talking about the seed of Satan, part two. I guess you could say this was the part two. And so we are going to do a follow up, just sharing some of our insight, things that we took away from the show, and maybe some questions that we still have. So, Akoti, did you have anything you want to
Yes,
add?
I have a lot of those. Peace, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Yes, man, this was one of those segments where it's just like I just kind of sat back and I just needed to absorb because I was like, I started to get a little confused. I was like, wait, I thought when we see the word, you know, God, that's Yah, not Elohim. And I just started getting like a little confused with like how do you know when they're saying Elohim versus when they're saying Yah? And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was the opposite of what I had before. So I was like, okay, was like, okay, I kind of was thrown for a loop. So I was like, okay, I got to go back to my notes and kind of, yeah. But I would say the question that we started off with was, if you came face to face with the devil, like, how would you respond? And my first thought was like, run. But then I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, I would speak to it, like ask, like, why are you here? And start like depending on the reason, just start speaking like, okay, well, I don't fear you. I'm like, I started thinking about like talking back to it, but he was like, yeah, you're gonna get ate up with that one. But one of the responses that I guess I'll share the ones that he said to hold on to Abu Harut. He mentioned I would feel awkward because he would be a reflection of myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Slash average individual. And that did make me think
Mm-hmm.
about the spiritual training, like how we had to do like the mirror exercise and come face to face with what's on the inside. And just from what people shared, I've heard different experiences of seeing the face transform or shape shift and things like that. Is like, okay, well, that's what I thought of. But I think that like what he shared is like I've heard of that concept before. Like, okay, well, whatever demon you see, or that's just you. That's coming from you. So it's like I wonder, like, just like in reality, like I know we all share like our thoughts, but if we're still plagued or dealing with certain demons, are we really running when we come face to face? Like, are we really running because we didn't kill it, we didn't fight it off, it's still there. So like, what are we really actually doing? We are face to face with the devil inside of us, you know. Yeah,
It's
so that's
interesting that he brought that up because that was when the question was asked. I immediately went into imagery. Like I had an image in my head. It wasn't necessarily, well, this is what I would do, but it was the image that popped in my head, and it was exactly that. It was like you're standing, um, looking at yourself. That was the image that I got. But then I also think about a lot of times we think, and maybe this is just me, I'm just exploring thought, but sometimes we think that the devil or that thing, right, it exists outside of us, right? But we never consider that it could exist within us. And then sometimes when we see it in other people, I don't know if this has happened, but sometimes we get afraid, or we don't know how to handle it when it shows up in someone else. And I think that's a reflection of what's inside of us. Like, we're seeing what's inside of us make out in other people, but sometimes the lack of knowledge, where he talks about the like being underdeveloped in knowledge, that can create a devil. But I think it's sometimes if we can't pinpoint what kind of devil that is, what exactly is that what we're looking at, when we're seeing it in somebody else, and then when we're seeing it show up in ourselves, how do we pinpoint what that is? So I don't think it's necessarily maybe the question of what would you do when you come up, when you see the devil, but maybe maybe even going down to, do you know what a devil is, or can you identify it when it shows up, or what do you do when it shows up in yourself?
mhm.
That was where my mind went.
Yeah. I'll go to some of the other like responses because someone still Alba Jason. That was another good response. From what you shared, he said my reaction would be anger. My response will be like, well, how do I kill you? And I think that Chief has shared like in different podcasts and segments like the devils. He did a whole segment on devils. For those who haven't seen it, check it out. But he lays out the description of like how to like spot a devil down to their mannerisms. Like, oh,
Mhm,
so I know exactly what I'm looking at. That's one of the
mhm,
segments that really like that's one that stuck out to me. I was like, that's on my list of favorites because I'm like,
mhm,
yes, we got to know what you're looking at and know how to navigate,
mhm,
in the world. But um,
mhm.
well, not in the worldly world, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was one like, how do I kill this thing? And then I thought about the segment Killing Me. He did a whole segment on that, like killing that ego and coming forth
Mhm,
as a new like just stripping that off, those onion layers.
mhm,
And
mhm,
but yeah, I think when it comes to the devil, like you were saying, like it is like you do kind of want to like sometimes like when we see it in someone else, it's easier to spot, it's easier to speak to. But then when it comes to ourselves, it's like sometimes it's like, well, you can't catch amnesia all of a sudden and be like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. But it's like, no, you do get it. It's just that, there's some you're being taken over in that moment. So you can't
mhm.
see it. But if it was someone else, you'll be able to see clear as day what's going on, what's happening. So I think even in those
Right.
moments when yeah, when the devil is being spoken to um or I mean, I remember Chief saying sometimes we're just possessed by spirit too. Because I was thinking like, well, how can we have a devil and that good part, that higher self in us at the same time? But he did do a segment on evil is good, and he did share, no, the truth would make you free, or
So
yeah, make you
makes
free.
you
It was that one. Yeah, he was like, we all have a devil, God, and ourselves inside. So um
mhm.
yeah, I guess learning how to like work with all three. But yeah, I just yeah, you want to jump to share. So go ahead.
Yeah,
I can
because I don't want to jump over Abba Jason's comment when he said he would be angry. And I think you can
mhm,
tie it into what you just said in terms of we have different aspects of ourselves. There's the God side, there's that devil, or those different aspects that exist within ourselves. And I think I question whether that anger would be geared towards a question of like, well, why do you exist, or why are you doing this, or and I think having that understanding of like those three things can exist in one person, and it doesn't mean that it's bad or it's good, quote unquote,
mhm,
right? It doesn't mean that it's bad, it just is. So I wonder if sometimes that anger that's there is because of maybe a lack of accepting that those three
mhm,
can exist within one. I
mhm,
wonder if it's that, or if if it's anger because maybe one is prevailing more than the other. I
mhm.
wonder if it's that. So I wish Abba Jason was here to kind of maybe jump on and share it, where his thoughts went when he mentioned that, that anger. Or maybe what did you think when he said, I would be angry?
Well, I think about what Chief has taught. Like he said that yes, he's angry. Like some people will be like, oh, they'll make it seem like it's a bad thing. Oh, you're an angry black man, but it's like, no, I'm angry. But what I do is I transform it into something, so it may come out like I express that through helping people or like making a change and things of that nature. So you transform it into something that could be beneficial as opposed to being harmful. Because like hurt
Mhm.
people. So it's like you can be an angry person, take that out on others, or you can use that anger and transform it into something to be utilized for good. Because I do think about like how we're supposed to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and if we love the Elohim, the Elohim is love. So if we love, then we have Elohim within us. And so I think about
Mhm.
like, do we may have those different emotions or have the devil like running them up, but it's like the scripture shares like we're supposed to treat each other a certain way with love. So no matter what you're struggling
Mhm.
with, you're not supposed to just unleash that onto other people or even onto yourself. Cause like Chief has always said, like he says a lot of times to us within our house, like you only harming yourself. you know, you're
Mhm.
only harming yourself. And I think we don't like know like just how much we are harming ourselves. But I think when we harm other people, then we kind of see like, okay, well, if I'm hurting this person like this, well, maybe that's how I'm hurting myself. But I don't know. I think it's just easy for us to kind of abuse ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, but other people are not so like they're like, well, I'm not gonna take that abuse. They may, value themselves, and so that's sometimes that's when people see like, oh, I gotta make a change. I can't do this,
Mhm.
but if not, they'll go on
Mhm.
and continue to abuse them also. So,
Mhm. I think
but
about when you said like sometimes people will abuse others or even abusing yourself, and I think I'm just trying to tie it all together to the act of giving your children over to the devil.
mm,
And I think a lot of times when you talk about I guess that anger, where that anger could come in, sometimes there's an anger because we may have certain ways about us that are devilish, right? And I think, well, how would we abuse ourselves more? I think would be when we feed into things that are devilish or of the devil kingdom, right? Like drugs, sex, gambling, all of those things that could increase those devils inside of us. I think that's like a form of abuse, I guess, or self-abuse. That's something that came to mind,
mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew says, will it be a joint link? Yes, we will provide that joint link in just a moment. I would let me pull on another point here because there were so many different things that like okay, so I'll speak on the children aspect. I think that
Mhm.
when it comes, I think that's one of the reasons why we homeschool and we value homeschooling because it's like we don't want to send the children out to the public school system for them to learn from someone else. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's a given. So it's like I think that there are a lot of things as it pertains to our culture where it's like we do things a certain way so that we're not giving our children up to Satan or to be a seed of Satan or to be of the devil's kingdom. And I think about
Mhm.
our supreme mathematics, and you can either be building up the devil's civilization or building up Yah's kingdom. So it's like,
Mhm.
like we've made our choice, and
Mhm.
but I don't really know I was going with that one, but yeah, that's what I
Mhm.
thought of. I think certain things is just kind of like it explains why we do the things that we do because it's like yeah
Mhm.
we don't want to build up the devil's civilization, so that's why we may homeschool or eat a certain way. And and I think about
Mhm.
what you shared about some people be like, oh, you follow all the laws. It's like, but
Mhm.
how important is it to you to not be like a seed of Satan and give to that kingdom? Like people are so committed
Mhm.
and dedicated, they break all the laws for that. So it's like it just kind of shows like, where a person's heart is, and also shows us
Mhm.
who we shouldn't like why we don't intermingle with everybody. And our new people should only be with our new people and live amongst our new people. And, you know, that's the reason. So
Mhm. When you talked about having children and being able to homeschool them, I can't say that I have had that experience because, I don't have any children myself. So I haven't gotten to that aspect of the culture. But I do think about times as a child, and going to school and
mhm,
at home my father raised me, so it was one thing to be taught. I know for me, like the lessons behind sex, right? You're taught one thing at home, but then when you go to school, when you allow your child to go to school, you have to sign a waiver. There's a waiver that you have to sign in order for your child to take what you call the sex education class. Or I think in fifth grade it was something where which was interesting, they separated the boys and the girls, and they talked to the young girls about their menstruation, and they talked to the boys about whatever they talked about, right? But you had to
mhm,
sign a waiver in order to do that. And they shared information based off of whatever the school system said, this is how we want you to educate the children. Now, my father didn't give me necessarily a spiritual background on sex or a cultural background, because essentially we didn't have that. But I think about what the difference would have been if there was a cultural reference to back those conversations in the household. Maybe he wouldn't have signed a waiver signing your child over to be educated by the devil's civilization on sex or on menstruation. So
Mhm.
to me, that's what came to mind. Just examples of where I can pinpoint where, oh man, you were given over to the devil right then and there. But again, it's lack of knowledge, lack of culture. So that's what I can speak to.
You know, the link is in the chat, y'all. So if y'all want to join in on the live, feel free. But I'll share like another thing that kept going through my mind was like, okay, there's so many different yas, and I think this whole time I've been saying Yahuwah, but then after listening to this segment, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a difference between Yahuwah, obviously, and the Most High Yah. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop saying that because I don't know, like, that one's like is the father of the Nakash or the serpent. So it's like that was sent by its father. So I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be using Yahuwah. So it's like I was like, okay, I'll just stick to the Most High Yah to be on the safe side. um,
Mhm.
we do
There are
have a
times
guest.
where I find myself,
Oh, go
peace,
ahead.
peace, Master
Keep going.
Effect. No, I was just gonna say there are some times where I find myself using a sacred name, Hashem, instead of Yah or the Most High Yah. Sometimes I say
Mhm.
Hashem, and I know that's a little bit more sacred. Um, but I don't know if even in the moment when you're saying the word Yah, because to me it sometimes it can become vain. And I think about it at times when I am saying it, because it's like, well, you're just saying yeah, or you're just saying, it's almost like you're saying God, but you're not saying it, but it's what's happening in your mind when you're saying it. I think about, is there a true moment that you're reverencing the name or what you're saying, or are you just saying it? Sometimes I think about it like that. And peace, Master Middleneck, I hope you can speak to that or add on.
Peace, peace. How you sisters doing?
Doing
Mhm.
good.
Were you asking Sister Margie, at what point do you switch over from just replacing the word God with Yah versus actually reverencing the name?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yes.
I can I can sort of relate to it because after the naming ceremony, um, after we were given our names, it took me a while for my internal um like my internal dialogue to use that name. So I I would use the name externally when I'm thinking. I would still like, all right, Tonio, what you gonna do? It's like I just call myself by my own name. So it's like,
Mhm.
are you really internalizing that shift? So I could
Mhm.
sort of relate to it. It brings me back to what Chief had spoken to about that accusation or that accusing or that fall being a process. Even what he was speaking about
Mm.
last night about the dangers of thinking that something is a one-off. Like
Mm.
okay, if I
Yeah.
just change my words, then I don't have to think about it anymore. If I just
Mhm.
change my vocabulary, I don't have to think about it anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I think it is a process,
Mhm.
and where you progress along that line or that path is you continuously learn more. You don't just say, "Oh, I don't say God, I say yeah." All right, done deal. I can stop learning about him now. So
Right.
you keep learning. Like Chief was saying last night, like that's the game that you're being given.
Mhm.
If you practice these laws, you can learn the ways of the Most High, and it's not emotional. I think you said it's not emotional. I don't remember the word, emotional blackmail or something. something to the like, he's not trying to hold you as an emotional hostage. Like, well, if you love me, you keep my commandments. If you really love me, it's not like that. It's like, no, if you want to be close to me and you want to attach yourself to me, and if you're called by my name, then you would do well to learn as much about my ways as possible. And it's similar to even like Chief. Like, we're learning from Chief, and certain things he says he doesn't do, and it's like, well, if my teacher doesn't do it, then why should I do it? You might have some of those moments, like if someone says, well, I know a quick way to make some money by selling drugs. Well, my teacher used to be kicking down drug dealers' doors back in the day. So how could I be selling drugs? It becomes really, really simple in that sense to say, well, if Yah doesn't do it, then why should I do it? And more importantly, if Yah doesn't do it, then where did I get this from? You see, like you had asked earlier, I thought it was a real good question. At what point did I get handed over to devils? I think that's a real critical question to ask. For me, I think with TV, I think that would have been the point where I got handed over, because all the stuff on TV is what I used to learn about the world. I wasn't the most social person, so I didn't get too messed up by public school, except for the expectations I thought I should have of myself, and what I thought a quote unquote normal person would do. But when it came to TV, I was just looking at all the possibilities of what a person could be, and some of those things shouldn't really be options.
You know,
I give Karar peace. Peace, welcome.
peace. I give.
Hey, peace to everybody.
You said you took it back to the point about at one point did I get handed over to the devil's civilization, and as you said it, my mind went further back, and I was like, well, what if you were handed over to the devil's civilization at the point that your father looked at your mother and started lusting?
That's true.
And that seed of lust was already planted as a thought for who you would be. Now, when the physical thing happens, you were handed over in thought before you were even planted in the womb of your mother. So it's just like, can we pinpoint it all the way back to then? You know what I mean? So if we're unraveling or we're trying to like pinpoint things, and are we moving towards extracting that seed, or is it more so, man, I can acknowledge and pinpoint this is where it started, and it's still, it's still there, but it doesn't necessarily rule me.
Right.
If all these things, if the God, if the devil, and all these things can exist within myself, maybe it's not about let me try to get rid of it, but at least I can acknowledge and pinpoint where it started.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope again, because it could be another one of those one-off situations. Like, all right, at least I know where the problem started and I can name the problem, but I still live in the problem, because that was a one-off solution. Like, oh, well, at least I know, at least I'm informed, But you brought up a good point, in terms of even whose kingdom you're a part of, even before you have the child. Like, for instance, for us, who are foreigners, I don't live in the United States, and I wasn't born in the United States. But if I were to have a child with the sister from the States, not only would I have an opportunity to immigrate, but that child is now considered an American. You see, like, they're already born in it. You see, and depending on the nature of it, I know people who have gone to the States and had a child just so they could immigrate. You see, so the child wasn't an act of love, in terms of the thought leading up to the act, because sex is, connection, of course, is an act of love. But leading up to the act, it was just, nah, this is just transaction. So what is the child about growing up? Even certain things as simple as the child was in breastfed. that grew up on baby formula, which sounds it already sounds suspect. You made this in a lab? Or you made baby formula? No, all you gotta do is just add hot water and you good. It's like, no, I don't like it. I'll mute myself out. I know Akio Kara just joined in.
Well, for me, it's like I try to look for examples this whole, segment, and then, I kept on thinking, I was like, what's a modern example? Usually for me, when it comes to those seasons, of course, I'm like, that's little that I was put in front of the TV. There's even pictures of me sitting in front of the TV by myself because, yeah, I had those same problems. Therefore, that's why I know all the movies that I know and TVs that I know, even the old ones, But I thought about it, and as we were talking about, or as she was talking about, how Hawa and Adoma and everybody knew about those Nanites, and I was like, what's an example of that? And then I thought, oh, it's like when because she was talking about how you grew up down south and then you seen kids up north, but then I thought about how even if you in the South and you go to the white side of town, you know what I'm talking about? And then usually things pop off or some injustice pop off when you go on the other side of the tracks. You know what I'm talking about? Scoutsboro boys, Emmett Till, you were safe when you was with your peoples, but once you go to the other side of the tracks or go to the the Nightite side of town, all of a sudden you winked at a white woman, or you whistled at a white woman. You did something, and then all of a sudden you are charged and executed and things like that. It's like, yeah, that sounds about right. You was on the compound, and then what? You get off the compound, or you like she was talking about, giving the example of you sending your kids to London and Germany. I'll say Germany, Berlin, Paris, Italy, whatever. And I was like, yeah, it's like when the same time when them native First Nation kids had to go to them dang on boarding schools, and then they come back and then they can't relate to their parents, and their parents can't relate to them. Here they is talking about this is science and woo 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 woo. And that's why I get an analogy of Killers of the Fire Boo, because it was like the same thing, those days they was going to college and universities and whatnot. They was riding around to get it. Then all of a sudden they bring them dang on now I realized, there was a whole plan the whole time to I was like, man, but you see it and it's like, oh, okay. Now I get it, and that's why I would say, study is so important, because while she was giving all these dang Bible verses, here I am, got 2 Bibles in front of me, 3 Bibles. I'm like, okay, let me see what this will say. Okay, let me see what this will say. Anyway, all right, because I'm like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, it does say that. Okay, just because it sometimes it takes that much love, and it's like, dang. Man, I wish I had a day. Man, where's my dictionary? Where's my Bible dictionary? I find it now because it's just so much, and it's it's layers. It is layers, man. You keep on going down that rabbit hole, you're gonna find a lot of things. But when it comes to those seeds, them seeds have been planted and things like that. And you just gotta be wary. You gotta be wary of them. Because you don't know who you you don't know who you sacrifice your kids to. You know what I'm talking about? So yeah, man.
I just wanted to speak to Akio Karai excitement, just what you shared just now. That excitement of like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to, that to me is beautiful. That right there is something we all should be we should have. We all should be like that with 2 Bibles, 3 if we need it. But we had someone.
I got like 4. Like I got like 4. I got look. I still got my Dago, my old military Bible that I carry with me through Dago basic training. I got the one with the my Jewish Bible. I got my Torah. I got my one with the Aramaic text. You know, it's just a lot, man. That's but everybody ain't me. I'll expect everybody to do it.
Yeah, that's why it was kind of hard for me to have a point this for this Sabbath after show, because I was like, I found myself looking at the different verses, trying to look up the names at the same time. I'm like, I was going all over the place. but yeah, peace, peace of Koti.
Shalom, shalom, Akil, shalom, everyone. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I don't want to interrupt, but I think something that I just want to say what stood out to me. But if you guys were flowing, keep going.
Oh, no, go on, jump on in.
Okay. There's so much. Like the line of Melchizedek, that really stood out, like the order and how it's recognized in scripture. And that completely went over my head reading scripture at first. So now I'm going to go back and see where that postulation happens. Like who else is in the order? And yeah, that part stood out. Also, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I just got excited.
Yeah, it was a lot today. Even with the seed of Satan, like, and it aligns with the 13 families that Chief gave us, because in my studies of the Rothschilds, that was one of their like creeds, like always be dutiful to the God of this world, which is money. So they understand there's different L's and they know who they serve. So yeah, that relation to being aware of what your desires are can tell what Yah you're serving, or what deity rather.
As you said that, I'm thinking like people who would probably be mad at the Rothschild for like, things that they do. And it's like, how can you be mad at someone for being aware of who they are, where they came from, and just honoring that, right? Like you can't be mad at somebody for that's just who they are. That's what they do, And I think
I'll be like,
maybe sometimes.
I'm sorry, Josie.
No. Go ahead. You got.
No, I was just gonna be like, I thought it was kind of interesting because I do research on the Rothschilds a little bit, and I was like, yeah, you 5 sons, put them all in the major cities of Europe, you know what I'm talking about, and all of those, clans, got up to status and whatnot. But I was like, yeah, it makes sense, at least they got a country out of the deal, it's no bigger than Jersey, but I mean, hey, it's something, right? Because that's true. They got the Rothschilds do have their own mausoleum in Israel, like they do. You know what I'm saying? And you usually look at the London side or the English side of the Rothschilds. You never think about the French side or the German side. Any of them, but there was like 5 branches, and all of them did something totally different, but they all had one goal. You know what I'm talking about? So yeah, it be deep. It be deep.
They stuck to their order. It makes me think of like the opposite. Like if we're all sticking to the order of who we came from, like we would be able to identify each other no matter what part of the globe we go to. Like it might be, people here in America, it might be some over on the continent, but everybody is sticking to like the order that we're supposed to be operating from. So,
Peace of Koti, I say peace.
Peace. Can you hear me?
Peace.
Yes.
Okay, so I had a few things. So I'll start with what was just said regarding the being able to identify, because as everyone was talking, I kept thinking about bloodline and going back to something that Oba said a while ago. He said it many times. Like it's about who's living the culture, right? Because, I that's like really important because if we look at like where we are physically, like all of us, even the Bahamas, like if over here in the West, we're diluted for the most part. Like like bloodline wise, like we've been diluted. Like we don't know if we've been mixed up with the Jebusites, the Moabites, and all the other ites that we were told not to mix with.
Shylights.
So when we think about the seeds, they could already be in it. So not even when we were handed over, we were born in it. And I think somebody said that earlier. And then that seed, so those seeds were cultivated. I think it's the moment we were cultivated, because like if we're, because most of us, like we weren't born as I knew, like we came over, so we could be, we, you know, the lack of a better way to explain, converts, right? So we have, I think that moment, or I guess I'll speak for myself. Like I won't include y'all in it, but y'all, you know, jump in if you want. I think it's not even, because I had the same thing, like the TV, sitting in front of the TV and being explained, from having those explanation and those mandates and expectations, right, from parents about what you're going to do when you get older, what you have to do, the things you have to accomplish. And I just like went by the book, but they were reading from a book, and then their parents are reading from a book. So was I handed over, or was I born into it? Right. And I guess I see what you mean, Maximilian, like by slippery slope. It's like it makes me think of what Oba said, because I'm probably gonna say it all wrong, so maybe he'll get in the chat and correct me. I don't know.
Paraphrase.
Like about I'm gonna paraphrase the part about like ignorant. We learned it at the retreat, like knowledge being the source of the solutions, right? And ignorance being the source of the problems. And so now I am experiencing, or I have, right? Or I have experienced and moved in a certain path because of the ignorance. And I'm not, and this is not to excuse, you know, because I also bought into it and kept moving, even though hints and things were given to me, right? All throughout life. So that I'm not trying to like excuse anything that I have done. But I just wanted to point out that whole part of like being handed over, like we were handed over generations ago, right? Like the because of that ignorance, like because my ancestors moved in a state of ignorance, it caused all these problems. But then those problems just kept manifesting and repeating and birthing themselves over and over and over again. So that's kind of what went through my mind. So I was like, I said, I'll just say me instead of like including everybody else in that. I'll say me, but that's like what I thought of. And so, and I think that grace or that mercy we're shown in those hints that we get all throughout life when we do go to church, right? And we were given the law, even though it was wrong. Hints were given, and we had the opportunity, we had the choice to study into it and look into it or not. And I didn't. You know, some things I did and others I didn't. And even the things that I did, I just decided like, well, I'm gonna do this anyway. I'm gonna go party. I've been to those party cities, you know, maybe not the international ones, but I've been to the party cities. You know, I've done you know, like going to Miami, going to South Beach. I never did Atlanta, and I'm glad. But you know, like, you know, I had that. Well, I'm in college. I had that whole mindset. Well, I'm young and I'm gonna do this right now, and and all that stuff. It catches up with you when you realize, like, hey, this was the wrong way to go. And then it takes me to something that I think you said it, Margie. Like, okay, so now when I'm trying to move righteously, like, is it in vain? Am I just saying things in vain, or do I really understand? Is it really in me? So I have to like go through those thoughts, and like, I guess, as I would say, those are in my heavens. Those kind of thoughts are in my heavens frequently. Like, you know, do I really mean this, or am I saying it because it sounds good to say? Right. And then other times it's like, no, I know this is what's supposed to happen because the word says XYZ. And then that devil that's inside is like, yeah, but, you know, just like if I say that, but don't you want to do this? But don't you want to do that? And it's a constant battle. And I even think he said this before, like you're gonna have that constant battle. And you should, I feel like he said like you should name it. This is way back when we were having the class on solutions. And this goes into what you were saying before, Master Menu, like about the naming, right? Like when you call yourself by your name, that I do the same thing. And sometimes and less now. Like it used to be like, oh, Deidre, you just you doing this is so stupid, like what were you thinking, right? And then I had to step outside of myself and be like, well, why are you still saying Deidre? Why are you not claiming Yafe? And it was like,
Mm.
well, I had to realize, like, well, maybe that one, that devil, I do have to keep her name as teacher so I can identify it, because the things
Mm-hmm.
that Yahweh is supposed to live by and do is not those things, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be compassionate. She's supposed to speak life. She's supposed to be beauty in a space, not Deidre who is nervous, fearful, and like always messing up, you know? So so yeah, I had a whole lot. It was like bouncing around to like everything everybody wanted to say, and I was and willfully that made sense and it was clear. That's it.
It seems like when you're talking about not necessarily, I guess, getting rid of Deidre, but being able to identify like that's something Deidre would do, or that's something Deidre would say, or and you've been given Yafe. I think I can't go super deep. Maybe some of the brothers can, but I do remember, like when Master was talking about the Helios Biblios in the story of Abraham to Yahweh Shai HaMashiach is supposed to be every person that it goes through, like that spirit goes through. So at one point you're this person, and the next you're this person, and so I think about when you say that, it's like, okay, I've been given Yafe and I'm heading towards Yafe to fulfill what Yafe is supposed to be or do. But in between that journey, I'm going through this particular character, but I can always reference Deidre. Then I go to the next character, but I can always reference the character that came before and Deidre. So it's like, I hope that makes sense because I'm seeing it in my head. It's like a timeline. I'm seeing it, but I hope that I'm making sense.
It sounds like you're speaking to bloodline and lineage in a sense. Like how you would
Mm-hmm.
have these are the generations of Adam, or these are the generations of Noah, or these are the generations of Yahushua. And it's showing you like it went from this person, they lived this long, they had these many children. If they were a king, they reigned this long. This is the quality of their reign, and then this is their successor. So it seems as though it goes back to that idea of a process,
Mm-hmm.
and moving along the lines of a process. Even what Chief was talking about last night, this goes to your other point. He was saying you, and Sister Yafa, his point as well, where you can name them, but you also know that you don't feed them anymore. Like you have to be able to say, because on medical charts they don't report that it's a parasite, or that you got parasites inside. Well, why don't you want to name it? So if you do name the parasite, that's one step, but it's not like the one-off step. Or if you name the
Mm-hmm.
parasite and you prescribe, you give a prescription and the
Medication.
person gets it and they take it, it doesn't necessarily mean that the thing goes away. You still have to do another diagnostic and say, oh, it's still there. I guess what I gave you was impotent enough. Let me give you something stronger, or something like that. Or what Chief was saying last night, like um, you can starve them out, but you can also suffocate them by depriving them of oxygen. And once you realize, like, you can use more specific language instead of like, I'm battling some demons right now. Well, how? You might be
Mm.
doing it ineffectively and
Mm-hmm.
prolonging the process, or well, I'm going through some stuff right now. How? Like you might be um just biding your time until the storm blows over. You might not actually be doing what's necessary to remedy the problem. And like just the Afri brought up, like knowledge is the solution for all problems. But if you just sort of acknowledge it and you don't keep digging to see what that thing is or to know everything there is to know about the problem so that you could properly approach it, then you're sort of staying in a muddy state, you know. So you become like one of those people who's like, well, Kemet is my ancestry. I know all about Kemet, and Kemet is like the cradle of civilization. It's like I, it's like we used to do this, and we used to be kings and queens, and used to build pyramids. It's like, okay, well, Chief would come up, someone like Chief would come along and be like, well, are you a king or queen now? Show me how to build a pyramid. You're saying they had electricity back then. Do you know how electricity works today? Like, so what is it? What is it that you're claiming? And if you claim it, are you responsible enough to actually do the knowledge so that you could properly use it and not just claim it? I don't walk around like I don't need to be walking around claiming, well, we got electricity until that bill runs too high and they turn off the power and I don't know how to charge my iPhone. Like, do I have the guts to go back to that saying that Chief did on solar power and actually go through the steps and build a solar power generator? So I think I'll go on mute, but that was my piece to add to that, Sister Margie.
Peace.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Peace. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Peace, greetings, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I do, and I actually want to be on camera too. I don't know. All right. Somebody else on? Okay. There was a lot. I just have so many questions, but I will say my mind went to so this dawning. I kept thinking about the idea of Sunday. And it even, some of the thoughts and some of the scripture, like I was digging into, kind of made me see how, we give our children over to whatever those devils are in so many ways. I think about just the idea of, when she says, this is not the exact phrase, but it is that tradition is dangerous. I'm putting it that way though. Like tradition is deadly because somebody gave us the Sunday, and now everything that we correlate to a disc or circle or the sun, now we attribute to honoring the idea of the sun. So no matter where you go, no matter what you think, no matter how we're functioning, no matter what new information you're given, there's still that subconscious program. There's still that idea that's been consistent, and there's a motif and an image that's always there about the idea of the sun. And I mean, that's one thing. I guess I'm just pointing to how his charge to explore the symbols and the words and the meaning is directly also connected to all of this, because now when I go out into the world, I have to know how these things trigger an thought, how it triggers my own feelings, how it triggers anything. And I'm not doing that to say, okay, it's somebody else doing it. I have to be so conscious of it. That's why we're learning what the words are for the day of the strong and the months and so on, because it's like we give over our children and ourselves to whatever the devils are by, I guess, aligning with whatever that culture is, that worldly culture. And so I started to think, I was like, so every time I see a disc, a sun, and even negative space, the only thing I could think about is giving honor to Sunday. And it's going to be always a consistent thing. And it takes a lot to then erase that, because you have to know, you have to have that knowledge. And I think that's where the idea of, not just the idea, and I think it's a simplistic form of it, but it's like that too much knowledge or too little knowledge will produce devil. So then I become a part of the world, and I don't, like, I'm not conscious of it. The only thing I know is I'm doing traditionally what was given to me. I'm just following culture. And then that made me think of, has anybody seen The Boys? Chief mentioned the film The Boys, the series The Boys. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, speak about giving your children over to the devil. What's her name? Starlight?
Yeah, Starlight.
Starlight is thinking she's a whole, well, she's a Nephilim, of course, but she's a whole, she's filled with all these powers. She has all these powers. Someone someone messed with the genetic makeup, right? A matter of fact, your mother decided to she decided to yeah, she decided that for you. So the truth is, you're not really functioning from a place where, yeah, you're a god and you have all these powers because, you just happen to have them. No, somebody is creating, behind the scenes, somebody's creating a whole scenario for you to live out. And you're living it out thinking, yeah, I'm doing this, but you're not. You're not. And the truth is, you're just one of many other devils playing out a role, playing out a role. So I thought, as I was listening to and reviewing Caesar Satan 1 and then listening today, some of the scenes from The Boys kept coming back because it is directly an example to me of some of what is being shared, and it happens in our lives too. You know, so those are two things that I thought stood out to me as like you all were sharing, but also during the share earlier today.
It's
I,
such a
I just
narrow path. Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. Umba.
No, I just wanted to say it's such a narrow path. Even
Mm.
in scripture, it says like that distance in between ignorance and knowledge is such a narrow path. That's all.
Yeah. On top of that too, what I was gonna say, it's related to a homeschooling documentary that I watched earlier this year, and the sisters had brought up homeschooling earlier. I think both Sister Sequoia and Sister Margie. And one of the interesting things they were talking about unschooling, and unschooling is sort of different from homeschooling in that homeschooling follows a certain, or it could follow a certain pattern and curriculum and schedule, whereas unschooling, the young people learn on a self-paced basis, and they may decide to play video games the whole day today, and tomorrow they ask like, where does electricity come from? And it's like, let's find out. And they go on this journey, but in order to learn about electricity, you gotta have some mathematical knowledge, and you gotta have some knowledge of physics even. So you get to learn these things this way. But the aspect of freedom is what usually um, gets a lot of people caught up, because how are you going to be sure that they're on par with other students their age academically? It's like, all right, cool, but a lot of them perform really well in their college entrance, but they also report something else because they had um, a level of freedom in how they move and how they learn. They're used to having freedom as opposed to children who are, you know, they're raised on an industrial model where it's like an assembly line. There's a bell that rings, this part goes here, and this part goes there, and this part goes there. And at the end of a 12-year process, you got a product. And you send that product for further manufacture. You send them to college. Excuse me. You send them to college. But they have reported that usually the youth who go through that 12-year process of public schooling, they don't know how to act when they get a taste of freedom. Whereas the ones who actually had a level of freedom and autonomy and could move about as like adults, and they could speak to their parents, not adults, but like autonomous beings. And when they go to college, it's a different kind of experience because they're not as centered, because they're a little bit more used to having a say as to what they do. As opposed to someone who grows up under restriction, it's like, well, I've been growing up this whole time, and I was told you can't do this, or you can't do that, or you can't do that unless you're grown. And I'm not walked into it. I just do everything. I go crazy. I start having sex this and that way. Someone offers me drugs, I'm gonna take it. Someone offers me alcohol, I'm gonna take it. If I want to skip class, I can skip class, and they just spiral. And then they might like catch themselves at the second or third year, and it's like, okay, now it's time to study. But I had to get that out of my system, in that sort of sense. And maybe like Chief reminded me of it last night when he said, maybe we're not supposed to be staring at these screens as often as we are. Maybe we're not supposed to have a microchip just yet. We should have been walked into it in a certain sense instead of like just giving these things right away. Because I was watching the movie last night. I started watching the Transformers series that Chief had recommended. I was like, I'm just gonna watch all the movies. And the first one was in 2007. And I looked at the model of phones that they had, and I was like, this was just 2007. Like, they didn't have touch screens or nothing like that. They still had the flip phone where, like, if you recorded it, it's like real short recording, poor quality recording. I was like, wow, this was so recent. But it feels like it was so long ago because of the leap in technology. So I wanted to add that piece in as well.
Thank you. Peace, Aki Mayuba. I don't know if you want to add. Okay.
I'll just
Aki Mayuba come with 3 strings this time. Three strings.
He putting it on.
Not 2, 3. Come on.
I just want to add, that's a sacrifice too. I know a lot of parents, they use the screen time as like another parent, but that's like a sacrifice onto another deity. So yeah, that just came to mind when you were speaking, Adele.
Yeah, for sure. I will add too that with the unschooling, there's a danger in that too, because some of them they do give their children up to screen time a lot. One of them was like, yeah, my son plays GTA. He played GTA for like 8 hours yesterday, and then we taught him a lesson today, and then he played GTA some more. It's like, all right, so there are some things that they're exposing their youth to that they could still corrupt them, And with the unschooling, it's just a higher level of responsibility on the parent and the child, as opposed to an excuse to expose them to any and everything for the sake of liberty, because it's not necessarily freedom; it's just liberty.
And then there's also a reaction that happens from when you take away that other parent, the screen time. They go ballistic. I've seen children actually like go ballistic because they can't have a tablet or something. So the children of they've been lost already.
Master said Mayuba's in the listening to skills. So that would explain why we haven't heard that. But when you come down, Aki, we'll be here waiting for you. So peace, Aki. Now, if you want to join in and throw your brick and add on, feel free.
Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
Just following along where the conversation was when I jumped in. Yeah, that idea of like giving children something that they shouldn't be exposed to before, they're ready. It's something I see a lot, especially like just giving a child access to the internet without any sort of blocks. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you could literally see anything. Like we see, I remember my mother, she was speaking about this the other day. She was like, when I was young, we didn't just see people die like we do now. Like you could literally just be on social media and you'll see people dying. Child can see people doing all types of crazy sexual acts and stuff. It's like it's right there. And it's like, okay, after you see that, Now, what does that now start to do to their minds as they get older? What sort of addictions, like porn addictions and things of that nature, could they develop by the time they're like 10, 11, 12, because they were exposed to it so early? So yeah, that really jumped out at me when y'all were speaking about like, yeah, the exposure is like it's crazy serious. And the fact that not only is it the exposure to like these images, but it's also exposure to ideologies and ways of thinking. So like that way of thinking that my feelings mean that, okay, if I feel a certain way, then that means that how I feel should always be supported.
Talk about
You
it.
know, that's something that I see a lot. Just, I mean, in social media, of course, we have certain movements that will tell you, well, if I feel like this, then you should treat me like this. Um, but that's a mindset that even goes beyond just
Yep.
like what we may present ourselves as. Oh, I want to present myself as a woman. So if I feel like a woman, then you should address me as one.
Yep.
But it's like, what if I just feel like I'm right in this moment? I feel so strongly that I'm right. You should support that I'm right because I feel like I'm right. So now nobody could tell this child anything because they're just, it's like their God is their feelings.
You know what? Since you open that door, I cannot. Because I have been like, that has been like kind of crossing through my mind like for the last, I would say too strong. It's just something recent that I experienced in that same vein. It's so pervasive, like what you're talking about, that validation of feelings, that it becomes dangerous to everyone around that even enters into the near that cipher of those type of people. Like it starts to affect. And so then it made me think that this is the reason why being set apart is so crucial. Because if not, because if not, then we get kind of sucked into that type of crazy. And I don't like, and I'm gonna say crazy because that's what it is. Like, I don't think there's anybody on this call that'll be like, you're not supposed to say that word, because it's absolutely, it's insanity. And I'll give an example, like without mentioning names. Like I recently had to, how do I say this? I won't even say step back from a contract. I was asked to step back. I'm going to say it just like that because of language that I was using regarding women and girls. And because that language, which was true, not even factual, because we know facts are just widely accepted, right? But truth, because it was true, it was harmful. And they didn't necessarily use that word, but the implication was that it would be harmful to those who feel like there's something else. And I just thought, like, this is why, like, I was grateful to the Most High that I was not dependent on that one thing, right? Because if I had been, it would have really messed up a lot of, messed up some things that I have going on. But again, it just took me to, this is why being set apart has to be, because when I do have children, it's like I wouldn't want them mixed up in the ones who are feeling their way through this world just because they want to feel like they're different, because their parents did not give them because their parents just let them go to the system, whether that be to the television or to the public school system that says you can feel like whatever you want and everybody has to validate it, which is just insane to me. So that was that.
It something popped in mind as you were saying that, and I get your drift. It was interesting to me. I did a tabling event about maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe last strong, I don't know, maybe. And it was a youth health event, and we had to pass out some surveys. And on the survey, now we're dealing with high school students, right? So you got ninth graders, and we had to have these surveys out on the table. And in the survey, one of the questions was asking the children to identify how they felt they were, right? We gonna say that. And it was interesting because it was a group of young, I'm gonna say young men, right? They came up to the table and I was sitting there by myself. And so they were going through the survey because they wanted one of the things that we had to give out. And so when they went through the survey and they got to that question, they was like, what? Like, I can't believe this is being asked. Like, what? This is crazy. I'm not answering this. And these are young, these are young guys who are quote unquote in the school system, but they still had something in them that was just like, I don't identify with any of this. Like, why are you asking me this? And I thought that to me that said something, because it's like you're trying to push something on people who I feel innately know like this is wrong. This is wrong. Right. Even though we're in the school system, quote unquote, right? Something in us know like this is not right.
Right. And it's very sad that it's one group of feelings that is only accepted, because it sounds like these young boys, they already know that innately. But if they were to ever say that out loud to I would say the wrong person, then they would be ostracized. They would be attacked for acknowledging truth. It's insane that we are moving by. This is what like the seeds of Satan is so like it's so important, like, because it's so pervasive. Like, these are the feelings of a small few. The vast majority know the truth. Like, man, woman, that's it. There is no variation. There is no in between. And I was even told, it's like, well, you're talking biology. That's all there is. There is no in between. So why are you making exceptions for what I feel, what someone feels, which is fantasy and illusion? And it takes me back to what Oba said, like, you can either live in the illusion or you can escape the illusion.
Yeah, and he also said, like, just thinking about, was it last Shadow that he mentioned that there is the devils create the culture, so if they're creating the standard of what should be the culture, Koti, they're providing this very passive form to those older youth, but the younger youth, it's not passive, it's very much aggressive, because they're teaching it in the school system, right? They're teaching it in the school system. I'm giving them opportunities to openly identify as that and change their names, even without parents being informed as well. So that's a huge piece, right? They took that away in North Carolina, actually. So, and then they put it back in. But I think about who's creating the culture. I think about Olympics, right? I was looking at like what seems to be the opening of the new Olympics and what that looked like. And I had to scrub my brain, my eyes and everything. I was like, absolutely, that's what y'all doing? Astarte all over. Astarte all up in there. I'm like, what is, but it goes back to the point of separation. It goes back to the point of who's creating the culture, who's putting this thing out there and saying, this is the standard now. This is you're using Olympics now as a platform for this, right? I think that ties right into also the reason, maybe because sometimes I think I'm making a connection and maybe not. It's the film Changing of the Worlds, and really digging into like those phases of what dictates when a particular nation rises and falls, and the idea of its technology and the innovation. Like, I thought that was really, all those things had me going crazy, because I'm like, So then it means that we're supposed to be able to see that. We're supposed to be able to see the cycles and see how lack of education too is a big part. They say that's one of the fall. One of the ways that a nation falls is lack of education, or rises, sorry, is the introduction of high standards of education.
Mhm.
That's lacking here. So it's like, you know, yeah, I just wanted to add on to your point. It took me in so many different places because it's a culture. It's a culture that's being created as a standard, and we have to be careful.
It seems
Yeah,
like there's a.
absolutely.
So
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, shalom to you. Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to greet Aki Isaiah.
oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I saw the same thing. I saw the same ceremony you did, and I was like, well, I ain't gonna say what I said, but I was like, but knowing, sort of French history, I'm like, I was looking at this whole thing. I'm like, first of all y'all ain't dang on French, and some of y'all was colonized by the French, and it's like, and these are some of the most, well, foppish. I just say it like that, foppish. Everybody know, and it's like, it's typical, but it's like, of all things, it was like all the symbolism. I was like, this is some, and I'm in the store, and this sister that didn't know me, she was like, it's all ritual. You see all of that? That's all ritual. That's all she kept on saying. It was like, it's all ritual. It's like, yeah, I'm like, what is this? And I was like, man, knowing what I knew, I was like, oh my goodness, oh my, I just couldn't. But it was like, I was thinking like, when it comes to having great knowledge and and how you can become a devil that way, it made me think of how, some of the most, I would say, devilish things you can find are in these institutions of higher learning.
Yeah.
Where do you have all these, pro so-called profound professors with all this high knowledge, but they can be some of the most devilish seeds you've ever seen, and introduce your kids to some of these quote unquote liberal ideas. You know what I'm talking about? It makes me think about what she was talking about when we was talking about, the first thing you do when you colonize, that the Euros did when they colonized, was build a school. Say, oh, look at all this civilization we have. You see the same thing in dang on Shaka Zulu. But when the prime minister's like, hey, yo, we're going to introduce to the Zulus what we got. We got civilization. Wow, look, we got guns. Look at yourselves. We're going to share that with y'all, and get what we want out the deal. You see this so-called, oh, we'll educate your kids too. Bring them over here, that, and we all know, if you ever been to Europe, it's like, this is not a great place to live. But you have people sign up. We're going to send you to London. You're going to go to Yale. Whatever, we're going to send you there. We're going to send you to Spain. Madrid. You're going to learn something, And it's like, bro, like, you just go send your kids to Nod, to the great cities of Nod. It's like, man, and then, you see someone who's like, oh, we in the city of lights. It's like, look, that lit up. I don't, I was like, I'm looking at, oh, we're going to go through the Louvre. I was like, oh, that's Greek. But, I was like, yep. I was like, I'm done. It was just too much for me. I couldn't take it.
But do you see how it's like a flip, like the city of lights even, and what she was touching on, that the light with it, like we're the light. So they make like a whole city of lights, like that's supposed to be the light, but it's really like the belly of the beast. And you're sending your light into the belly of the beast. It's just a flip.
Yeah.
So,
It makes sorry.
so throughout this conversation, when I think about like the vagabonds, are like how parents sacrifice their kids to these devils out here, whether it be the school system, or whatever that looks like. My mind kind of went to like the parents. If you're a parent with nothing to offer your child, of course you're gonna be like, "Here, America, take my child." You know, you'll be quicker to do that, um, rather than have them stay close and teach them based off of your agenda. Um, I think about that quote from the movie Black Panther where he goes and sees his dad in the ancestor realm, and T'Challa's like, "I'm not ready to be without you." And he was like, "Have I not been preparing you for my death? Have I not had you by my side since you were a little boy, preparing you for this moment?" So it just makes me think of that, like, the role on the parents when it comes to that sacrifice. Like, you hand your kids over to the system, and then your kids come back to you all bent out of shape and twisted with all these different thought patterns and emotions. And now they've been taught by a foreign system how to, like Niall said, like, now their guide is their feelings. And now they're looking at you, telling you you're silly because you believe the old way of doing things and stuff like that. And now there's a problem, you know. So yeah, that's where my mind went with it. It's just it's a widespread issue, but I don't know.
You know,
Depending on who you are, and I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead.
I can't tell if you're finished or not. My service. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's good. I was like pausing during my sentence. So it's all good. Go ahead.
No, I was saying as you were. I don't know. Okay, I'm just gonna talking. I'll tell you about. I was saying, as you were saying, like not being able to have, like not having anything to give your children, and so you hand them over to the devil's civilization. I for some reason my mind went to not being able to have or not being able to give your children something equates to a lack of creativity. Like if you're not able to create something, then of course you're going to give them something that's already been created. And being able to have two individuals who are able to create or to operate from that space, I think is them able to operate from the highest space. Their highest space or highest place of being is to create. So if I can't create a home or a space that allows a child to be able to explore and to to really explore different thoughts that they may have, then of course I have to give them something else that has been created for them. So I think I don't know, my mind just went there. It went to the word of creation.
Absolutely. That's where you get like consumers creating consumers. The parents have nothing to offer because they just been consuming what the geniuses of this world have been creating. So when they have a child, all they could teach that child is consume like I consume. So they could push them off to the world. But yeah, so I think that's important. And also, I would say having a curriculum for your children or a way you want to teach them or what you want to teach them. I think that's not something I've seen a lot. Um, when we look at homeschooling or whatever kind of schooling it is, it's a lot of people don't step up and say, okay, well, like El Garar, he got the history down packed, so you know, him standing up and being like, I want my son to get this history down like I got this history down, you know? So pushing that agenda, I don't see a lot of people trying to tend to that spark.
You
I-
know what?
It 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 goes to like having that purpose for your homestead and having that focus and knowing, okay, this is the vision, this is the mission, this is what it should look like. Um, and it's not just happening with devils, it's people who are, and I mean, I'm not saying, you know, so there's this family that I follow, and there's this young, he's a toddler. And he's taught biblical verses, and he just kind of, they record him saying those biblical verses and singing and so on, and I just thought about, what does a toddler or child look like when they're exposed to a certain level of culture at the beginning, from uh prior to birth, right prior to
Right.
conception, right? um and the parent and the father eventually started to do a breakdown. Well, not do a breakdown, but kind of show this is how we prep him. This is, I mean, like basic things. Like, and there were people asking, how do you do it? How do you get this toddler? I'm like, what do you mean? How do you get this toddler to do this? Like, why is it, um, to the point where people asked him to sell the index cards that he uses to teach his child. They want to pay
It's
for
not
that. So,
gonna work.
so everybody gets but talk about consumerism, but also talk about, the first thing that came to my mind was, what is the purpose for that child that man is imputing into, or that family is imputing to that child? And if I'm a parent and I see this and I'm inspired by it, now my question now becomes, what is the Most High's intention for the child in my home? Because if I buy these cards, yes, they may be biblical verses, but do they speak to what the culture is and what it is that that child may be here to do? Like, that
Right.
should be like the very first thing. So I heard um just the conversation. I kept saying, what in your mind is saying to you to just buy a template or repurpose thing, versus how do I create something that is specific to the youth and the mind and the spirit that's in front of me? Because that person, they've been given something, I've been given something to do, and it sure ain't replicate what somebody else did, because they may be following another god. Their God may be of Cain and my God may be of Abel. Like, you. So I just, you shared that, and those are ideas and examples. Sorry, of
Mhm.
how sometimes we do. It's just consumerism. There is no intention to really um move off of maybe some instruction that's from spirit as to what to do with these youth that we create. Like,
I
you
think
know.
Yeah.
goes
To
with like
share
the
this
seeds
thing
of Satan.
on. Uh-oh.
I
Uh-oh.
think that goes with like the seeds of Satan, because what we're talking about is unconscious creation. That's in the 14 keys. Like they're they're like drones. And if we didn't come to our new, we probably would. If I didn't come to our new, I'd be a drone too, right? And maybe that is their purpose, is to be a drone for the geniuses on their side, for the devil geniuses, because just because they're devils don't mean that they might not be smart. And that is what they're doing. Like, I just need soldiers. I just need to. So they just, they have whatever order is in place at the top. The drones don't need to know about that. You just need to know, buy this, do what I say. It's like they live, marriage, and have children, consume, whatever the other great signs were saying. Like, that's what their purpose is to just be that. So then they wouldn't have anything that a directed creative something to give them, as you said, Marty, because they can create. Clearly, they had a child. There's children being born, so people can create. They're just unconsciously creating, and that's probably by design for the devils that they serve.
I
Absolutely.
just wanted to share, just to pose a question. Just listening to what everyone is sharing and thinking about like how we're all in our new. So I just wanted to ask, maybe more so for the brothers, but what are some ways that you see that that are some fundamental teachings that you would instill so that your youth are not taken over by the devil's civilization?
I would say one of the more important principles for this is Kuji Chagalia, that self determination. Using our own culture and ourselves as the reference point for what we do, rather than the beast system or foreign cultures. I think that a large part of why people even give their children over in that way is because there is a lack of self determination. Like it's like we don't even know what we're supposed to be doing based on who we are. So it's like when she was talking about the worst thing you could do to a people is to take away their culture, take away their language, take away their history. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So now there's not who am I? Like now what do I base my decisions off of? It's like, well, here the devil comes. It's like, here, this is what you can do. This is where you can go to school. This is what you can eat. These are the holidays you can celebrate. But if a person never goes through that journey of reclamation, and of really seeking and seeing, okay, well, I know that this is not my original culture. This is not what my people came up with, and I could see clearly that it's hurting us. Then what is that? I need to go on that journey. If somebody doesn't go on that journey and they don't decide to stand on that principle of self-determination, and I think it'll be very easy for them to not only give themselves over, but also give their children over. So I think that self-determination is a real key component in this.
Absolutely. I would say I I'm definitely gonna instill in my children. I'm going to teach them the meaning behind their name. I think that's super important. That's where you first get, like, you first figure out like your self identifier. Cause once you know the meaning behind your name, you're like, okay, you could go back, look at the history of the people who had those names, and be like, okay, well, Joseph, for example, you got Yusuf, Yuya, is connected to Joseph. Joseph was a dream interpreter, amongst other things. So that kind of gives you a hint to some gifts you may possess, what your journey may look like. It just kind of gives you some insight. And that's something I really want to push on my youth when I have them, because I wasn't taught that. I was just born, yeah, that's Isaiah. And at that time, my parents were like in super heavy in the church. So every time I be around like church people, they're like, Isaiah, you know Isaiah was a prophet, right? And like that was my perspective on the name Isaiah. So I wanna be the one to tell my kids about that name and give them understanding before the world tries to tell them what their name means.
Thank you for sharing that.
Huge. I
Powerful.
would I would teach my youth the principle of cause and effect, and I think the idea of process is also super important to that. Chief had done a segment a while ago um, on one of the podcasts speaking to youth, and he said one of the most important questions that they can ask is how. Like oftentimes when they get told to do something, they ask why. Like why do I have to do this? But a better question he said they can ask is how. And I think that how enlightens them to the process of how things happen, um, and that allows them to see the cause and effect of many things. So if someone says, "Oh, well, you should do this," they would immediately go to, "Well, what's the effect of doing this?" Because you're giving me a cause. And even like, "Okay, what's your cause for telling me to do this thing?" And you can go back to that and you'll see like that the root cause doesn't lead you to anything that's good for you, based on the home culture that they'd be taught. So I think those two are super important. Um, yeah, everything else that comes after that, they'll have a better lens of how to look at it when they encounter it. When they see something that's unnatural, they'll know it's unnatural because they know how nature works. You see, I think that's one of the more important things that I would teach my youth. And then the skills that they need to learn, they can learn them more easily because they'll see it as a process, as opposed to, "I want to learn how to fix a car. Let me see how the engine works. Let me see how mechanical um, principles work." So I'm not just fixing this one thing, but I'll see how the thing is supposed to run. I might even be able to improve on the design.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I just thought about like that seems like it would help children to mature like at the rate that they're supposed to too, because a lot of times we have like adults who are still immature, and it seemed like if they would have learned that lesson early on in life, they would have matured properly and understand like, oh, if I do this, it will cause this, or maybe I shouldn't do this or treat this person this way because it will cause this. And so that's what my mind went to. But I think you brothers, you all shared like what you all shared was very powerful, and just for people to listen and hear, like, okay, we hear the seeds of Satan and what that looks like, but what would it look like, to be on that, to be serving the kingdom of the Most High Yah, and what values will be instilled there? What could I do? I don't want to be, building devil's civilization. So what could I do so that I'm not building up that? And so thank you for sharing. And I don't know if anybody else want to share anything on the seeds of Satan before we
I
kind of.
did. I
Okay.
did. Give thanks, brothers, for sharing that. It sounds like, well, what I got from that is that your children will move purposefully, and in righteous purpose. And it brought me to that scripture in Matthew 18, I think. And Yahweh Shai says that the greatest crime is to expose a child to sin. And you like it's better that you kill yourself. That's basically what he said. It's better that you kill yourself than
Oh,
expose a child to sin. That's how serious it is. So it brought back to what even Akoti Margie was sharing with the young men, and how they reacted. There was an upside to that because this showed what their seed was, and now they're being exposed to sin, and even their reaction, it it's a natural reaction when you have a righteous seed. So just wanted to add that.
thank you. Yeah. All right. Anybody else before we I don't know if you have any final words to Coach Margie, but
No. Yeah, I would say I was kind of with Master Menelik on the cause and effect because it was just a thought because I remember how I was as a child. There was always a lot of questions. Well, sometimes you're told don't do this or don't do that, but you never truly understand, well, what exactly happened for this thing to be told, don't do this? You don't fully understand. And I think sometimes sharing the story of how you got to X, Y, and Z can help a child, at some point fully understand why you don't do X, Y, and Z, that cause and effect. So I was kind of with Master Menelik on that one.
yeah, yeah. I wonder like if you had the experience where you experience a child who has that type of energy. I know I have. Always asking, well, what's gonna happen if I do that? It's like just don't do it, but it's like they always want to know the consequences. So yeah, it just makes me think about when she shared like the different types of children. Like,
Mhm.
there's some out there that do come from that perspective. Maybe they always want to know the why, what's gonna happen,
But that's also how the
So
Most High
why?
works.
Mhm.
Like we're studying the law right now, the mitzvot.
Yes.
mitzvah. Thank you, thanks, Becky. We're studying the mitzvah, and it's literally just saying cause and effect over and over and over. It's not like a transaction. I'll give you this, or like I'll give you this in exchange for this. It's cause, you do this and this will happen. You do this and that will happen. So cause and effect, it makes a lot of sense.
That's usually how Yah punishes you as well. He doesn't just hit you with it. He says, because you did this, this is what's going to happen to you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
also did want to add one more thing. It was on the consumerism piece. Um, because when consumerism started as like an ideology um, that the states wanted to adopt, they had too many goods that they were producing. They had a period of overproduction and people weren't buying things because they didn't need them. They had everything they needed. And you would think that that's a good thing. Everyone has what they need. We can start making stuff. Or we don't have to push as hard to make stuff. But then profits were dropping. And we need to we need to keep taxing people and collecting their money in order to keep the system running. So we need a consumer class and we need people to buy things that they don't need. So I'm going to convince you that you don't want this hat, but you want to feel as good as the person who's wearing this hat. So maybe if I buy that hat, I'll feel more self-confident. Or maybe if I buy those shoes, I'll feel sexy. Or maybe if I buy this car, I'll feel like more of a man. I think that's behind what Sister Maria was talking about with the cards. You know, maybe if I buy those flashcards, my child would be righteous. But they don't actually want a righteous child. They just wanted what they saw on the screen. I want that behavior in a vacuum. I don't necessarily want the culture or the morals that it may take to sustain that behavior that may require more of me as a parent, you know, or it may require more of me as an adult. I just want the effect without the cause.
I just want to wear it. I don't want
Right.
it to be in me. I just want to wear it, and I want compliments like you're getting compliments.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
result would be something that's not fruitful,
Right.
more than
But it's
likely.
also someone who is dissatisfied, who grows increasingly dissatisfied because I bought this thing and I didn't get the feeling. Well, maybe I bought the wrong thing. Let me buy different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then, like Chief was saying, those things that you accumulate in order to satisfy that lust, they become a chain around you know. Or like um, that quote from the movie Fight Club, where he says, "The things that you own end up owning you." That comes along with the consumerism, and that's another thing that's off with the house. Like, well, why are all these people so dissatisfied with life, or why are they all so miserable, or why are they all so fat? Well, let's look at how you make someone miserable. Someone who was born with full of life and full of wonder in the world. How do you turn them into a addicted slob who just ambles through life waiting for the day that they can't amble no more? You know, and that opens up another line of inquiry for that youth, and they'll put it together on their own. This is messed up. You know, I don't know if I want to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm. I think like we see that in, and I could be wrong, but like pulling on what you're saying, like we see that in the increased rates of young people um, removing themselves. I have to say it like that, removing themselves from this world. If everybody understands what I'm saying, just not that. And we see that more, increasing more among youth who are melanin dominant, and I think some of that comes from that. We know, yeah, like they just being bombarded with like just mean things and crazy things, but it also comes from that like realization, like, well, I'm just ambling. Like, what is there? What is there? Like, my parents aren't giving me anything or can't give me anything of substance unless they're gonna buy it. And even with the parents, you see so many like, oh, you was such a happy child, or they don't know what was wrong. It's because you were buying everything, but there was nothing of substance that you probably needed to give them.
Oh,
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. I will everyone have a great rest of their Sabbath, and see you all next strong. Shalom alaikum.
Shalom.
Alaikum salam. Peace, everyone. Shalom.
Peace and
Shalom.